It was fun and exciting getting to know Fred Rabbit. He was quite the colorful fellow and made friends easily. He was especially popular with all the little boys. George, the bunny, had been admiring his hat for days, and this morning Fred had invited anyone who wanted a hat to meet at the walnut tree for a hat weaving lesson. Albert wasn't really interested, but Charlie and Daniel had begged to go, so Albert went with them to help. Frank also decided a hat would be good as a sunshade when looking for fossils. Ever since he'd found the snakehead, fossils had become an obsession, and he searched the hillsides daily. George, the skunk, was coming so he and George, the bunny, could match and both have hats. Nicholas, Andrew, Henry, Timothy, and Jack all came, mostly because they like listening to Fred talk. So, all total, there were 9 of Mother Skunk's boys headed toward the walnut tree this cool, sunny morning. Only Ricky stayed behind. "Straw makes me sneeze," he explained, and went off to find Jimmy Squirrel. When they got to the walnut tree, Fred was already talking with Mr. Badger. Apparently, Phyllis had been talking with Auntie Bee, as Mrs. Badger now preferred to be called, and the Badgers had volunteered to help with the project. Mr. Badger was already sporting a brand new straw hat of his own. Fred looked up from their conversation as he saw the boys coming and waved. "Howdy, y'all," he called out with his toothy grin. "You young'uns, come on over here and sit in a circle," he instructed as everyone scampered over. The sky was a light yellow, but the sun hadn't lifted over the horizon. Everyone was in a mood as bright and happy as the sky. "Mr. Badger is gonna be a help to us this morning. I learned him how to make straw hats, and as you can see, he did a right fine job," Fred said with a nod and a grin toward Mr. Badger. "So, I went ahead and made us a pile of nice long weaving straws. And the thing to remember is over and under. Can y'all say that?" All the boys nodded and replied, "Over and under." Fred nodded in approval. "If you get stuck, just tell yourself, over and under." Mr. Badger began handing out piles of long straw ribbons. It was obvious Fred had already put a lot of time and effort into the preparations. Then he pulled a large ball of twine out of his overalls pocket. "Now, first and foremost, we need to make a hat that fits the head. So, I'm a-fixin' to measure round your noggin," he said with a laugh. "George R.," he said to George the bunny, "you come on up and I'll do you first." Everyone was excited to get measured. They were each given a length of twine that went around their head to use as a measure for the finished hat. "Now, y'all need to spread out and have working room. So, first, you need to lay out a long straw, then cross it in the middle with another to make a cross. Now, just keep laying more so they're always crossing in the middle till you have kind of a circle. Keep them spaced even all around." Fred and Mr. Badger went to each one and helped them lay out their straws. Everyone was trying very hard to follow his example. "It kind of looks like the sun with rays," Albert observed. Fred smiled and laughed. "You know, that reminds me of a joke. Here goes. Bread is like the sun. It rises in the east and sets in the west." He slapped his knee and laughed. Everyone giggled. "I just love to hear him talk," Timothy whispered to Jack as they both laughed. "All right then. Now, y'all remember, over and under. Take another strip And in the center where they all meet, y'all are gonna weave over one under the next. See? Like so," he said as he demonstrated on George R.'s hat. "Now y'all hunker down and get to weaving," he smiled. "Mr. Badger and I will lend our hands if and you needs help." As the boys busied themselves with the weaving, they found it was a bit harder than Fred made it look, except for Albert, who seemed to have a natural talent for it. His was twice as big as everyone else's in no time. "Right nice," Fred smiled at Albert. "Hey, y'all, look here! Albert is ready to start forming the sides." Everyone turned their attention to Fred. "Where's your hat measuring twine?" Fred asked Albert. Albert took it out from his pocket. "Good. Now, sit with your knee so's it just goes round," Fred instructed, and Albert did his best to wrap the twine around his knee. "Okay, now put the center of your weaving on your knee. Be sure and use your twine to measure now and again." Albert had not really wanted to come this morning, but he found himself engaged in the project. It was fun to create something new and learn a new skill. Charlie and Daniel, however, had lost patience and interest and had left their weaving to hunt for caterpillars. George R. was having trouble pulling his weaving tight enough. George S. was trying to help. Fred left Albert and came back over to the Georges. He patted George R. in the back with a grin. "Let me help you, son. You got it all wonky-jawed." George S. cocked his head to the side in confusion. "Wonky-jawed?" he asked, a puzzled look on his face. "Yeah, you know, wonky-jawed, messed up." Fred laughed. "Oh," George S. laughed. "Mine is wonky-jawed too," Henry called. Mr. Badger stood up. "Be right over," he said as he went to help. The sun was high and the hats were starting to look like round baskets. Everyone was working them over their knees to form the round shape. But by now, even the older boys were getting tired. Andrew and Henry were throwing broken bits of straw at each other, and Jack had laid down in the grass with what bit of a hat he had made over his eyes to take a nap. Since Albert had been so far ahead, he had set his own hat aside to work on Charlie and Daniel's. He almost had the two caught up, but by this time his hands ached. Auntie Bee and Phyllis had been sitting on the front porch, visiting and watching the boys. Phyllis stood up and placed her teacup on the wooden stump she used as a side table. "Oh, I think it's time for a snack and a break," she said to Auntie Bee, pointing to the boys. "I made carrot muffins last night as a treat for today," she added with a grin. "I'll help you carry," Auntie Bee said as she went inside with Phyllis. The two emerged with 2 baskets of carrot muffins. "Ooh, doggy, that's some fine eating," Fred said, all grins as the two walked up. "Carrot muffins," Phyllis announced proudly. Everyone jumped up and ran to get a muffin. Even Charlie and Daniel came trotting back. "Thank you very much, Mrs. Rabbit," Albert said as she handed him a muffin. Fred patted him on the back. "Now that's what I likes to see, a young'un with manners. You hear that, boys?" Yes, thank you," everyone added between mouthfuls. "That reminds me of a joke," Fred grinned. "What's orange and sounds like a parrot?" He chuckled a moment and then blurted out, "A carrot!" Everyone laughed, especially Mr. Badger, who held his belly as he laughed. "Do you think I could have another muffin?" he asked Phyllis with a shy duck of his head and a sideways grin. "Well, only if you promise to get some exercise," she laughed as she handed him another. "Oh, I get enough exercise pushing my luck," he grinned. After the muffins were crumbs and memories, it was time to get back to work. "I want y'all to know we is almost done. Just the brim left, and that ain't hard at all," he said to encourage the group. Bring your hat top to me, and I'll mark where we need to leave an opening on either side for your ears to stick out. Oh, that reminds me of a joke, he smiled. What did one hat say to the other? You stay here, I'll go on ahead. He laughed and slapped his knee. Mr. Badger laughed so hard he had tears in his eyes and his belly shook. I love your jokes, Mr. Badger managed between belly laughs. Oh, well, thanks. They just plop out, Fred chuckled. Charlie and Daniel were back and trying very hard to weave the brim. Albert, I'm really happy you fixed my hat, Charlie said as he tried to put it on. But it won't stay on, he frowned. Discouraged, Charlie threw the unfinished hat away from him and pouted. I'll never get this done, he said with a stomp of his foot. Fred saw his frustration and came over. Hey there, Charlie, it'll be okay. If you can't see the bright side of life, just polish the dull side. Fred's smile was contagious, and Charlie grinned back shyly. It'll sit on your head just fine once the brim is on. Here, if you can't get the swing of it, I'll bet Albert can help you, Fred said with a nod to Albert. Sure, I will, Albert said and ruffled the top of Charlie's head. Bring me your hat and sit in my lap. Just watch while I finish it for you, okay? Albert gave Charlie a hug. Charlie took a deep breath, retrieved his hat, and climbed into Albert's lap. See? Over and under, Albert said as he swiftly went round and around, making a fine brim. It wasn't long before Daniel was standing next to Albert with his hat in hand. My turn next? Daniel said. Okay, Albert said, smiling up at him. Just promise me you will be careful with your hats and treat them kindly. Don't lose them and keep them clean, and above all, don't step on them, okay? Albert looked at both boys. They nodded. Okay then, Albert said as he lifted Charlie off his lap and stood up. There you go, Albert grinned as he placed the finished hat on Charlie's head. Perfect. Albert smiled as Charlie danced around. Now, Daniel, let's finish yours, Albert said as Daniel climbed into his lap. It was well past high sun as one by one the boys all finished their hats and began proudly wearing their creations. Albert was almost the last one finished, but considering he had basically made 3, it was quite an accomplishment. They were all scampering around in delight and telling each other how great they looked when they heard Mother Skunk. Oh my, but don't you all look grand, she said as she walked up, a huge basket on her arm. Gabby, Larissa, Clara, Molly, and Jillian were right behind her, each also carrying a basket. And by the way they were leaning, they were heavy. Oh, Phyllis, we brought a picnic, Mother Skunk called out. Phyllis and Auntie Bee jumped up from their seats on the porch and ran to help carry. Fred and Mr. Badger did the same. Let me tote that for you, Fred said as he took the basket from Mother Skunk. Thank you, it was getting heavy, she smiled back. Albert ran over and took Clara's basket in one hand and offered her his other arm to hold on to as they walked. This is a surprise, Albert said, smiling at Clara. I came over to fetch Molly, and Mother Skunk was trying to cut the kernels off of corn cobs. She had a huge pile, and it looked like it would take forever. So Molly and I joined in to help, but it was still going slow, so we asked Gabby, Larissa, and Jillian to pitch in, Clara explained. They reached the walnut tree, and Mother Skunk began directing. Phyllis, do you have a blanket or two we could put down? She asked, eyeing the front lawn. There were bits of straw everywhere, scraps from the hats. We don't want straw in our food, she laughed. Look, Mama, Charlie said, bounding up, pointing to the new hat he was wearing. Wonderful, good job," she praised him. "Well, Albert helped," Charlie said, looking down and shuffling his feet. Mother Skunk smiled at Albert and winked. "I suspected so." She laughed. "But it does look good on you," she added. "Everyone line up. I want to see you in your new hats." Mother Skunk waved her hand across in front of her, and like magic, the boys scampered into line, all squirms and grins. That is, except for Albert, who stayed with Clara. "What a handsome line of young men!" Mother Skunk exclaimed. Gabby hopped over to the Georges and looked at them critically. "You know, I think you both did a good job," she said, ears wiggling. "You look like a little Fred," she said to her brother. This made George R. so happy. "You reckon?" he said, all grins. "Now you sound like Fred." Gabby giggled. Phyllis and Auntie Bee came out of the yellow front door, each holding a large folded blanket. Jillian and Molly scampered over to help them lay out the blankets to make their picnic space. As the girls opened the baskets, they lifted out a stack of maple leaves for plates. All those corn kernels had been mixed with flour and honey and fixed up into griddle cakes. There were jars of peach raisin jam to spoon on top. What a lovely supper," Phyllis was saying to Mother Skunk. "You outdid yourself, Matilda. I should have thought about supper, but I just never expected the hats to take all day." Mrs. Rabbit's nose twitched nervously. "I'm happy to help. The girls did most of the work," Mother Skunk said, nodding toward Jillian and the other girls. "Besides, I wanted to come and be part of the party," Matilda said, eyes sparkling. Fred walked over and sat next to Phyllis. I was gonna make soup, but forgot all about it," Phyllis said as she nibbled on her corn cake. Fred grinned. "Well, this is right nice, Matilda. Thanks a heap. Soup, you say? That reminds me of a joke. If you boil a funny bone, it becomes a laughing stock." Everyone burst into laughter. "Well, this is fun. I had planned on picking slugs out of the garden this afternoon," Phyllis said. "That's not fun," she added, wrinkling up her nose. Fred patted her hand, an impish grin on his face. "That reminds me of another joke. Here goes. I took the shell off my racing snail, thinking it would make him faster. If anything, it made him more sluggish." Fred laughed and slapped his knee, and everyone groaned. "Yay, it's a groaner." Fred laughed. Just then, Charlie came racing up with Daniel chasing him close behind. Daniel was holding out a caterpillar and chasing Charlie with it. The two were laughing so hard they weren't paying attention to where they were going and almost ran over the picnic cloth. Fred grabbed Charlie just before he crashed into them. "Hey there, train wreck! This ain't your station!" Fred laughed as he set the squirming boy down. "Where's your hat at?" Fred asked Charlie, noticing his bare head. Charlie shrugged. "What did I tell you?" Albert scolded. "Go find your hat!" Albert sighed and shook his head. Mother Skunk watched Charlie scamper off. "He is all sky, like a sun-drop," she said and sighed. Mr. Badger joined in the conversation. "Have you gotten to know Mr. Beaver?" Fred shook his head. "Can't say as we've met." "Well, let's plan a get-together at my place. I'll introduce you," Mr. Badger said as he licked the last bit of peach jam from his thumb. "Oh my, yes. The Beavers are our best friends. They lived with us for a while after the flood," Auntie Bee added in agreement. The picnic was a huge success and a lovely end to a lovely day. The girls had taken the leftover straw ribbons and braided them, tucking little flowers into the weave, and were wearing them as necklaces. Jillian brought 3 of them over and placed one over Mother Skunk's head, then Mrs. Rabbit's, and then Auntie Bee's. "There you go," Jillian said as she stood back and smiled. "You all look lovely," she grinned. They all laughed and visited till the sky began to turn pink. "Well, we'd better get home," Matilda said as she stood up and stretched. "Us too," Auntie Bee said. "Mrs. Beaver has been babysitting the triplets. I didn't mean for her to have them all day." As Mr. Badger also stood to go, he saw Fred staring into space as if deep in thought. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Fred jerked back to the present and grinned. "Oh, nothing," he shrugged. After their guests had all left, Fred and Phyllis shook out the blankets and folded them to bring inside. As they walked in together, Fred paused and looked at Phyllis. He grinned a shy grin, head tilted to one side. "Phyllis, you're the nothing when people ask me what's on my mind." Chapter 47, Straw Hats. Discussion and questions. Imitation and humor. When we admire someone, the highest form of compliment is imitation. "When I grow up, I want to be just like you," is something a child might say to a loving and supportive parent. In our story, neither the bunnies nor the skunks and Albert have a father in their lives. As Fred becomes more established as a part of their community, he begins to take on the father role. When the little boys make hats to match Fred's, they're imitating him. George Rabbit not only wants to look like Fred by wearing a hat, but he is also trying to talk like him. He, above all the others, wants to be like Fred. This shows us his admiration and growing love for Fred. Question 1. Is there someone you look up to and try to imitate? Laughter is often the best medicine. It heals both heart and spirit. Fred's fun, easygoing personality and his ability to make everyone laugh is quickly winning him the praise and acceptance of the group. Question 2. Do you use humor to fit into your social group? Question 3. Is there someone who makes you laugh? Question 4. Have you felt the healing power of laughter? I am the composer and performer for all the music in this video. Both audio recordings and the printed scores are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. I will provide the link below. The painted illustrations are also my creation. Prints are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. This is a novel. The chapters are meant to be heard in the order in which they were written. And while each chapter can stand alone, they do build as new characters are introduced and past events are referred to. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The chapters are numbered, so if you're just joining us, be sure to go back and watch from chapter 1. In a dream, in a trance,